Did you know that if you package the machine learning models rightly, you'll be saving 60% of time, especially during the deployment? So, in this video, I'll take you through about what exactly is it packaging the machine learning project and what are the best practices that you need to practice when you're implementing in your projects. So, let's get started. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining in and welcome to MLOps Growth Rituals, where we take one step at a time in this MLOps journey. Now, the topic of today's session is packaging the machine learning project. When we think about the machine learning project, it's very complex. Now, just think about from the perspective of a data scientist. Now, if you're a data scientist, or if you're someone who have seen data scientists, is the way the model will be built is based on the experiment. Now, when I say experiment, we'll have a data, okay? We'll have a data, we'll write the code, and we'll train this data set using this various algorithm, and we'll try out various combination, and at the end, we'll choose the one that's giving us the best outcome, which is learning the better pattern in the data set. And that's the machine learning process. So we've got a data, we'll perform the experimentation, and we'll have a trained machine learning model. Now, once we have this trained machine learning model, we are going to deploy it. Now, you have already learned about the experimentation in our previous journey, but let me just tell you for everyone so that we are in the same page. So when I say experimentation, what we generally do is they'll try out various combination for hyperparameters, parameter setting, various algorithm, various settings, various data pre-processing technique. And once we apply all those technique, then we'll deploy the model. Now, this is what happens in the case of the machine learning. Now, all these experiments happen in an interface that's known as Jupyter Notebook interface. If I want to give you a quick glimpse as how it would look like, let me just open one of the Google Colab or a Jupyter Notebook. Let's say this is one such notebook that I have got. Now, here in this notebook interface, this is the notebook interface. You can clearly see that it has got IPYNB. And the reason that we call it as a notebook interface because it's an interface where we can write a code and we can see the output just below it and we can create nodes to perform the analysis. Now, this is the interface that's being used by data scientists. You can clearly see how unorganized this notebook can be. It's more of a reference and information rather than the deployment ready object. So hence, when we think about productionalizing the machine learning model in such scenario, okay, in such scenario, what we actually do is we would go ahead and like follow the best practices, just like we follow it for any software application. So that's the topic of today's session. That is, how do we package these machine learning projects? I'll take you through the like high level understanding first, and then we'll also have a demonstration as well. So let's get started. Now, I have already explained as what exactly is this machine learning project and what are the components of the same. Now, the reason that we want to package this machine learning project because first and foremost, it will help us in reproducibility. So with this packaging, we can ensure that we will have a consistent results across various environment, and it will also help us to avoid the common problem that we generally face that says as it works on my machine but not in other system. That is the reproducibility. And another reason that we want to package the machine learning project is deployment. By packaging our machine learning project, we can prepare the model for seamless integration into the production or any other system. It can be testing or the production system. And by following the packaging practices, it will be helpful for us to organize the code as well as the dependencies so that we can have an easier update and debugging, and we can structure the project to handle the increasing data volume and the user traffic. And lastly, by packaging in an efficient manner, this will facilitate and empower the teamwork by standardizing the overall project structure. So that means when we think about productionalizing the machine learning model, I can say that the packaging is one of the crucial step of productionalizing any machine learning models in the MLOps standpoint. Now that you have understood the importance of this packaging of these machine learning models, let's understand what does it go inside when we think about packaging our machine learning project. So here, first and foremost, is the model artifact. Now, model artifact is nothing but it's a trained machine learning model. So here, in the case of machine learning, what would happen is we'll have a data set. This is very important. I'll repeat it. I'm sure you might have hearing me multiple times. So we'll have a data set. We will have a code, okay, and we'll have some kind of a configuration. Like when I say configuration, these configuration can be related to my algorithm or the hyperparameter setting. Now, by combining these, we are going to have a trained machine learning model. Okay, so we will have a trained ML model. Now, this trained ML model is nothing but the model that has got the details from the data set and code. So this trained machine learning model that we have got, this is generally saved in a binary format and we call it as a serialization. So when I say model artifact, it's this trained machine learning model saved in a specific format. Now there are various formats that we'll be using while performing the saving, that is serialization. We have Pickle, which is one of the commonly used library when it comes to saving the machine learning model. We have Onyx. This is especially used when we want to build build in one framework and ensure that it's runnable in the overall environment, especially for the deep learning model. This is one of the most widely used method, that is Onyx framework, where we will save the model in this Onyx format. And in case if I'm working with TensorFlow, then I'll be using the format which is a commonly used format that's called as the TensorFlow saved model format. So this is one of the key thing that goes into the machine learning package. Now, apart from that, the other things that goes into this machine learning package are training script. So training script is nothing but the Python script format for the model that has been developed. Now, when the data scientist starts doing the experiment, as I showed already, we'll be doing the experiment in a notebook format. But as a best practice, we break that notebook into the individual file. And we call these individual files as the Python script because it will have a .py extension. And we'll call these training script. We'll have this training scripts, inference code, data pre-processing function. We'll create it in a modular format, and we'll also specify the endpoints as well. So in case if I'm deploying the model using the Flask or Fast API, we'll have those API endpoint details as well. So all these will be part of my code. Okay. Now, to ensure that it works everywhere, the other aspect that we have to take care is the dependencies. Like think about it. If I'm using the sklearn of 1.0, and if that's the version that I have in my development system and in my production system, it has got, let's say 2.0, then obviously if I use the same model, I'm going to have an error. So we have to maintain the environment dependencies. Now here, in order to create such environment dependencies, we'll be mentioning the required libraries and their specific version in a file. So generally in the Python project, we'll be creating a file that's called as the requirements.txt. Now inside this requirements.txt, we would go ahead and mention the environment details. That means the versions of our software and the library that we want to use. Now, along with that, we'll also generally create a YAML file that's called as environment.yaml file. We're using this also, we can set up the environment. Generally, we can use it for creation of the conda based environment. Now, once the project is ready, we'll also insert a sample data. Now, this sample data is essential to do the basic testing. So even though the data scientists have done the extensive testing and they have done the evaluation, while packaging, we need to mention at least a small amount of data. This will be helpful for us to do a simple test just to see whether my model is working as per our expectation or not. And this is called as the data, where we use the sample data for testing. Then while packaging, before we generate a package, what we also mention is, we'll also mention the test. Okay, I'll highlight this. Now, these tests can be any, like various kind of tests. It can be unit test, it can be integration test. Now, all these tests that we'll be doing to ensure the code quality. Then we'll have the configuration file. Now, in the configuration file, we'll be mentioning the details like the parameters of the model, the API key, the database credentials. So all these which are required for our application to run, we mention those as well. And in this configuration file, whatever the manual settings that we have to specify, we generally maintain it in this configuration file and we import this from the configuration file. Now, this makes it very much simpler when we think about maintenance of such complex machine learning project. Then we'll also specify the documentation. Now, here in the documentation, generally we'll be mentioning in the README file, where we'll be specifying the details about the project, what kind of data it accepts, what would be the output. And in case if it's an API based, we'll enable the documentation in this README file. And very important that we also specify the model card. Now, model card is a information data that we specify. And these days, it's getting much popular because model card has the details about assumptions that we have made about the data set, the model that we have used, the limitations, and what is the overall use case. Now, by creating such model card, it will increase the trustworthiness of the model that we have developed, because the users, the end users who are using our product, they'll understand on which case they can trust this model. So these are all the key things that we would specify in any machine learning project. And when it comes to packaging such machine learning project, we have various formats available. So to name a few, we've got Python packages. Now here we create the Python packages using the libraries such as distutils or setup tools. So this is generally used and primarily for Python. So where we'll create it as a package and we'll be saving it in a package repository or an artifact repository. It can be on standard pip or it can be on private artifact repository in AWS or any cloud environment, where using that we can automatically manage the dependencies and we'll be creating it as a single package. The other most common used is the Docker containers. Now, here in the case of this Docker container, we are going to package the entire application environment, which includes the dependencies and the libraries in the format of a Docker image. Now, the best part is once I have a Docker image, I can ensure that this can be run on any environment and it can be run on various platforms. And this is ideal and this is a most commonly used technique when we think about the productionalizing the machine learning models. Now, apart from that, we can also look into the platform specific packages. Now, this is specific to the cloud platform that we'll be using. Let's say it could be AWS SageMaker model packaging, assuming that I want to make use of the the SageMaker platform in order to take care of the end-to-end model building and deployment. Or it can be the Azure machine learning model deployment format in case if I want to deploy it specifically on the Azure. So in such scenarios, we'll be leveraging the cloud provider tools and the libraries in order to do the packaging. Now, apart from these, there are other formats that are also available in the market. Like, and this would be specific to the deployment target. Like you can think about jar for Java based system, and likewise depending on the kind of system that you will be using, we will be packaging in that specific format. Okay, so that's the overall goal, or that's the overall idea about the various packaging formats that we have got. Now let's have a look into a typical project structure for a machine learning project so that you'll understand what kind of packaging options that you would have and what would be the strategy whenever we are creating. For the demonstration purpose, I'll just open one of the code that I've got with me. Okay, this is one of the code that I was working. So you can have a quick look at it and you'll be able to understand what are the things that we have got. Now you can take a look at it. This overall structure of this machine learning project that you're seeing right now, this overall structure follows the modular structure. That means we have divided the entire steps into the individual Python scripts, and we are importing the other scripts inside one script, and we have also have a configuration file. If I just take you to this scripts folder, uh, not scripts, SRC folder, that's a source folder, we can see we have data processing and we also have a model. So that means to take care of data pre-processing, I've created one Python script, and for definition of the model is a separate file that has been created. And we also have a configuration file. As I've described earlier, this configuration file is what we will be using to define any manual settings for the project. Here in this case, I'm defining what would be the file name of my training data set. I've mentioned the path where exactly the file is present. Okay. And apart from that, I've also mentioned what is the name of the model that I want to create and where exactly the model has to be saved. So all these constant details that I want to save it for that environment will be mentioning right here. Now, apart from that, if there are any additional settings, we'll also specify right here. Then you can take a look at it. This is an example where we are packaging with the help of the Docker. And you can take a look at it. We are pulling an image, base image, and once we pull the base image, we are setting the working directory and we are installing the dependencies and we are exposing the code and we are saying how exactly the script has to be run. And this script is based on fast API, and based on this fast API which has been created in this main.py file, the files will be utilized and it will be deployed. So this is how you would go ahead and package our machine learning project. All right. Now here in this case, as I've mentioned, just to highlight a few more things, we have also mentioned this requirements.txt. This is where we are going to specify all the dependencies that we want to have it for this project is mentioned over here. And we have this readme.md file. If there are any documentation that we want to place it, we can place it right here. Now this approach is a Docker file approach. Now alternatively, we can also create a setup.py file and where we can make use of dist utils and other similar tools, and we can create it as a standard Python package as well. All right. And here in this case, so the serialization method that we are using is a joblib. Now, apart from joblib, as I mentioned, we can make use of the pickle, or we can make use of the TensorFlow serving or Onyx, depending on the model type that we are working with. So this was about the high level idea as how you can package the machine learning projects, guys. Okay, so with this, we come to the end of today's session and our daily dose of learning on packaging the machine learning projects for MLOps. I hope you had fun learning in this video. So folks, if you want to join live from the next session, just check out the link that is provided in the description. Join our community and I can't wait to help you in your MLOps and generative AI journey. Take care guys and I'll see you next time.